My brother spent years sucking up to our wealthy uncle, but the will reading revealed who really deserved his estate. For 15 years, Dalton made Uncle Crenan his full-time hobby. Every holiday became a performance. Expensive wines, thoughtful gifts, endless flattery about his business genius. Dalton would drive 4 hours each way just to mow Uncle Crenan's massive lawn, then stay for dinner and nod enthusiastically through war stories we'd all heard dozens of times. "You need to visit more," Dalton would lecture me after every trip. "Uncle Crenan asks about you constantly. He's worth 12 million, Ezra. 12 million. And he has no kids." I always shrugged him off. Uncle Crenan reminded me too much of Dad. The same calculating stare, the same way of making you feel small with a single comment. When our parents died in that accident, Uncle Crenan had swooped in like a vulture, managing their estate and making sure we knew exactly how much we owed him for his generosity. "He's testing us," Dalton would insist, "playing favorites to see who really cares." But I'd done my own math. Uncle Crenan was a bitter old man who enjoyed watching people grovel. Whatever inheritance he might leave wasn't worth spending my weekends pretending to worship him. Meanwhile, Dalton doubled down. He remembered Uncle Crenan's birthday, sent Christmas cards, even named his son after him. When Uncle Crenan mentioned wanting to try golf, Dalton immediately signed up for lessons. When he complained about his housekeeper, Dalton's wife started cleaning his house weekly. "You're making a huge mistake," Dalton warned me last Christmas. "He talks about updating his will constantly. You think your pride is worth millions?" Last month, Uncle Crenan had a massive heart attack in his sleep. At the funeral, Dalton wore his most expensive suit and delivered a tearful eulogy about losing his mentor and father figure. He spoke about Uncle Crenan's wisdom, his generosity, his irreplaceable guidance. I sat in the back row, watching the performance. The will reading was scheduled for yesterday afternoon. Dalton arrived with a leather portfolio and his accountant, ready to discuss tax implications and estate planning. He'd already researched Uncle Crenan's Porsche and started looking at penthouses downtown. The family lawyer, a stern woman named Ms. Rivera, cleared her throat and began reading from the thick document. "To my nephew Dalton, who spent so many dedicated years visiting me and caring for my needs." Dalton straightened in his chair, practically glowing with anticipation. "I leave my complete collection of vintage fishing lures and tackle boxes, valued at approximately $400. The color drained from Dalton's face completely. "To my nephew Ezra, who maintained his integrity and refused to participate in obvious manipulation." My stomach dropped to the floor. "I leave my entire estate, including all properties, business investments, vehicles, and liquid assets, totaling $11.7 million. Dalton erupted from his chair. "This is impossible. I was there every single week. I cared for him. I sacrificed everything." Mrs. Rivera handed me a sealed envelope with my name written in Uncle Crenan's distinctive handwriting. Inside was a letter that made my hands shake. "Ezra, your father always said you were too proud for your own good. I spent 15 years watching Dalton's transparent greed while respecting your principled distance. The estate includes assets Dalton knows nothing about. Tomorrow night, check the basement safe behind the furnace. The combination is your mother's birthday. What you find there will change everything you thought you knew about our family. I couldn't fit what happens next in this short video. Watch the rest down below." I drove home in a daze, Uncle Crenan's letter burning a hole in my jacket pocket. $11.7 million. The number kept bouncing around my skull like a pinball. My phone buzzed constantly. Dalton calling, texting, probably having a complete breakdown somewhere. I ignored every call. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about Mom's birthday, March 15th, 1953. 03 to 15 to 53. What could Uncle Crenan have hidden that was so important? And what did he mean about changing everything I thought I knew about our family? The next evening, I waited until after dark before driving to Uncle Crenan's house. I still had the spare key from when I'd helped clean out his refrigerator after the funeral. The massive Tudor-style mansion sat empty and dark, its Gothic windows staring down at me like disapproving eyes. I'd only been in the basement once before, years ago, when Uncle Crenan had asked me to help move some storage boxes. It was a finished space with wood paneling and fluorescent lights that cast everything in an eerie yellow glow. The furnace dominated one corner, a hulking metal beast that had probably been installed sometime in the 1970s. Behind it, just as Uncle Crenan had described, was a wall safe I'd never noticed before. It was painted the same beige color as the paneling, perfectly camouflaged. My hands trembled as I entered Mom's birthday. The lock clicked open. Inside were 3 items: a thick manila folder, a small wooden box, and a VHS tape labeled, "For Ezra. Watch this first." I stared at the VHS tape. Who the hell still owned a VCR? Then I remembered seeing one upstairs in Uncle Crenan's den, probably left over from the 1990s. I grabbed everything and headed back up. The tape was old and scratchy, but the image was clear enough. Uncle Crenan appeared on screen, sitting in his leather chair, looking directly into the camera. He was thin and frail. This had been recorded recently, probably just weeks before his death. "Ezra," his voice crackled through the television speakers. "If you're watching this, then you've inherited more than money. You've inherited the truth." He paused, coughing violently for almost 30 seconds. "Your father and I weren't just brothers. We were business partners, and our business wasn't exactly legal." My blood turned to ice. For 40 years, we ran one of the most successful money laundering operations on the East Coast. Casino profits, drug money, political bribes. If it was dirty, we cleaned it. Your father handled the street connections. I managed the legitimate businesses that washed everything clean. The room started spinning around me. The night your parents died? That wasn't an accident, son. They were murdered. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think, couldn't process what I was hearing. Uncle Crenan leaned forward, his eyes boring into the camera. Your father wanted out. He'd found Jesus, started going to church, talking about coming clean, said he couldn't look at you boys anymore, knowing what kind of blood money was paying for your college educations. The people we worked for don't believe in retirement. Hot tears were streaming down my face. I know what you're thinking. Why didn't I protect him? Why didn't I warn him? Uncle Crenan's voice broke. I tried. I begged him to be smart about it, but Thomas always was stubborn as a mule. Just like you. He sat back, suddenly looking every one of his 78 years. The accident report will say mechanical failure, brake lines severed by road debris. But I know better. I've been living with that knowledge for 22 years. Watching you boys grow up, knowing I could never tell you the truth without putting you in danger. The tape paused for a moment as Uncle Crenan struggled to compose himself. The folder contains evidence. Names, dates, financial records, photographs. Everything you need to bring down the entire network. The wooden box contains something your father left for you boys. Something he made me promise to keep safe until you were old enough to understand. Uncle Crenan stood up, moving closer to the camera. Dalton can never know about any of this. He's weak, Ezra. He'd sell out his own grandmother for the right price. But you're just like Thomas. Too damn principled for your own good. That's why I'm trusting you with this. The image flickered as Uncle Crenan adjusted something off camera. You have 3 choices. Take the money and burn everything else. Pretend this conversation never happened. Live your life knowing the truth but doing nothing about it. He held up 2 fingers. Option 2. Go to the FBI. Turn over everything. Watch a dozen crime families crumble. But know that you'll spend the rest of your life looking over your shoulder. These people have long memories and longer reach. A 3rd finger went up. Option 3. Use the evidence strategically. Play the game. Take them down piece by piece from the inside. It's dangerous as hell, but it's the only way to truly win. Uncle Crenan walked back to his chair and sat down heavily. Whatever you choose, know this. I loved your father more than my own life, and I've spent every day since his death trying to figure out how to make things right. This inheritance? It's not just money, son. It's justice. It's revenge. It's everything your father died for. The screen went black. I sat in Uncle Crenan's den for 3 hours, staring at the blank television screen. Then I opened the manila folder. The contents made me physically sick. Photographs of my father shaking hands with men I recognized from newspaper articles about organized crime. Financial statements showing millions of dollars flowing through Uncle Crenan's construction company. Detailed records of bribes paid to judges, police commissioners, city council members. And at the bottom of the pile, a copy of the accident report from the night my parents died. Someone had highlighted a single line in yellow. Preliminary investigation suggests possible mechanical tampering, but conclusive evidence destroyed in subsequent fire. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely open the wooden box. Inside was a letter in my father's handwriting, along with something that made my heart stop. Mom's engagement ring, the one she'd been wearing when they died, the one that should have been buried with her. The letter was dated 3 days before the accident. My dear boys, if you're reading this, then I'm gone, and Crenan has finally found the courage to tell you the truth. I'm sorry. Sorrier than you'll ever know. The money that paid for your baseball uniforms, your school trips, your college applications, all of it came from blood. I told myself I was providing for my family, but I was really just feeding my own greed. I tried to get out. I tried to do the right thing. But some mistakes follow you to the grave and beyond. The engagement ring belongs to you, Ezra. Your mother always said you'd know what to do with it when the time came. She believed you had your grandfather's moral compass, the one that always points toward justice, no matter the cost. Dalton is weak. Protect him from this knowledge. But if you choose to act on what Crenan has told you, know that I'm proud of you. Know that everything I did wrong, you have the chance to make right. Love always, Dad. I held Mom's ring up to the light. It was exactly as I remembered, a simple solitaire diamond that caught the light and threw rainbows across the wall. She used to let me play with it when I was little, fascinated by how something so small could create so much beauty. Now it felt like holding a piece of evidence in my own parents' murder. My phone rang. Dalton. Ezra, what the hell is going on? Ms. Rivera won't return my calls. I'm hiring a lawyer to contest the will. This is insane. Uncle Crenan was clearly suffering from dementia. No rational person would— Stop, I said quietly. Stop what? Stop fighting for what's rightfully mine? I invested 15 years of my life in that relationship. I earned that inheritance. Just stop, Dalton. Something in my voice must have gotten through to him because he went silent. I'll call you tomorrow, I said, and hung up. I spent the next week researching everything in Uncle Crenan's files. The money laundering operation was even more extensive than his tape had suggested. Shell companies, offshore accounts, legitimate businesses used as fronts. It was a sophisticated network that had been operating for decades. More importantly, I discovered it was still operating. Uncle Crenan's death had created a power vacuum. The various crime families were already fighting over his territory, his connections, his businesses. They assumed his secrets had died with him. They were wrong. I made my choice on a Tuesday morning while sitting in my kitchen, drinking coffee and staring at Mom's engagement ring. I called the number Ms. Rivera had given me for Uncle Crennan's estate manager, a guy named Vince Torino who'd been handling the day-to-day operations of the construction company. Mr. Torino, this is Ezra. I think we need to meet. We arranged to meet at a diner 40 miles outside the city, the kind of place where nobody asks questions and the coffee tastes like it was brewed in 1987. Vince was exactly what I'd expected. 6 feet tall, gold chain, expensive suit that couldn't quite hide the shoulder holster underneath his jacket. "Kid," he said, sliding into the booth across from me. "I gotta be honest. I was surprised when Crennan left everything to you. We all figured it would be your brother." "Yeah, well, Uncle Crennan was full of surprises." Vince laughed, but his eyes stayed cold. "That he was. So what can I do for you? You want to sell the construction company? I got buyers lined up already. Actually, I want to expand it." That got his attention. "Expand how?" I leaned forward, lowering my voice. "I know what Uncle Crennan's business really involved. I know about the laundering operation, and I know it's been rudderless since he died." Vince's hand moved slightly toward his jacket. "That's some serious accusations, kid." "Not accusations, facts." I pulled out one of the financial statements from Uncle Crennan's files. "This is from 2019. $15 million in cash deposits over 6 months, all structured to avoid federal reporting requirements. The Sanchez family's casino profits, if I'm reading the codes correctly." The color drained from Vince's face. "Where did you get this?" Uncle Crennan was thorough. He kept records of everything. I put the paper back in my jacket. "The question is, do you want to keep working, or do you want to watch everything fall apart while the families tear each other to pieces?" Vince stared at me for a long moment. "You're either very smart or very stupid, kid. I can't figure out which. Smart enough to know that chaos is bad for business, and stupid enough to think I can do something about it." He smiled, the first genuine expression I'd seen from him. "Crennan always said you were the dangerous one, said Dalton was all flash and no substance, but you were the one who could cut someone's throat while smiling." Uncle Crennan said a lot of things. "So what exactly are you proposing?" I took a deep breath. This was it, the point of no return. "I'm proposing we consolidate everything under new management. My management. Uncle Crennan's network, but modernized. Cleaner, more efficient, less violence. And what makes you think the families will go along with this? Because the alternative is war, and war is expensive." Vince considered this, drumming his fingers on the Formica table. "You realize if you're playing me, if this is some kind of setup, you're a dead man? If I was setting you up, would I be sitting here having this conversation?" He laughed again. "Fair point. All right, kid. I'll set up some meetings, but understand, these people don't give second chances. You better know what you're doing." "I do." I was lying. Over the next month, I met with representatives from 5 different crime families. Each meeting was a delicate dance of implied threats and careful negotiations. I had to project confidence I didn't feel while navigating conversations where one wrong word could get me killed. The breakthrough came during a meeting with Sophia Marcelli, who ran the family's operations after her husband's conviction on federal racketeering charges. She was in her 50s, impeccably dressed, with eyes that could freeze blood. "Your uncle was reliable," she said, cutting into her steak with surgical precision. 20 years, never a problem, never a leak. But you're an unknown quantity." "Unknown quantities can be advantages," I replied. "Nobody sees them coming." She smiled. "Ambitious, I like that. But ambition without experience usually ends in bloodshed." I pulled out a folder I'd prepared specifically for this meeting. "I've spent the last month studying every aspect of Uncle Crennan's operation. I found inefficiencies, places where money was lost, where risks were unnecessarily high. I have proposals for improvement." Sophia opened the folder and her eyebrows went up. "Digital currency integration, cryptocurrency exchanges, blockchain obfuscation." She looked up at me. "You understand this technology?" "Better than Uncle Crennan did, better than any of his competitors." This was actually true. I'd spent 3 years working in financial technology before Uncle Crennan's death, specializing in digital payment systems. It was knowledge I'd never expected to use for money laundering, but life has a twisted sense of humor. "Show me," Sophia said. I spent the next hour walking her through a complete modernization of the money laundering process. Instead of relying on cash-heavy businesses like Uncle Crennan's construction company, I proposed a network of cryptocurrency exchanges, digital wallet services, and blockchain-based transactions that would be virtually impossible for federal authorities to track. This could increase efficiency by 60%, I concluded, and reduce federal exposure by over 90%. Sophia closed the folder slowly. "If this works, you could revolutionize how we do business. It will work. And if it doesn't, then you'll have one less problem to worry about." She laughed, a sound like broken glass being swept up. "I'm going to recommend the consortium accept your proposal. But understand, boy, this isn't a trial run. You succeed or you disappear. Permanently. Understood." 3 weeks later, I was officially running a $12 million money laundering operation. Dalton still thought I'd inherited a simple construction company and some real estate investments. He'd stopped trying to contest the will after his lawyer explained how airtight Uncle Crennan's documents were, but he still called occasionally to complain about the unfairness of it all. "You could at least cut me in as a partner," he whined during one particularly pathetic phone call. "I mean, I practically raised Uncle Crennan's kids, if he'd had any. The will was very specific, Dalton. The will was bullshit. You know it and I know it. What I knew was that Dalton was weak, greedy, and exactly the kind of person who would get us both killed if he learned the truth. Uncle Crennan had been right about that, but Uncle Crennan had been wrong about something else. He thought I was like Dad, too principled for my own good. What he didn't understand was that I'd learned different lessons from our parents' death. I wasn't interested in redemption. I wasn't looking for justice. I wanted revenge, and I was playing a much longer game than anyone realized. The modernization project was a massive success. Within 6 months, I'd increased the consortium's money laundering capacity by exactly the 60% I'd promised Sophia, while simultaneously reducing their federal exposure profile to almost nothing. Cash transactions were largely eliminated. Paper trails disappeared into blockchain encryption. Federal investigators found themselves chasing digital ghosts. More importantly, I was building a comprehensive database of every person, every transaction, every crime that passed through my network. Names, dates, amounts, methods, everything. I was creating the most detailed criminal intelligence file in American history, and I was preparing to burn it all down. The plan was elegant in its simplicity. I would spend 2 years establishing myself as indispensable to the consortium. I would modernize their operations, increase their profits, and gain their complete trust. Then I would hand everything over to the FBI, but not before ensuring that every single person responsible for my parents' death was destroyed. It started with Vincent Torino. I'd discovered through Uncle Crennan's files that Vince had been the one who actually tampered with Dad's brake lines. He'd been paid $50,000 to make it look like an accident. The order had come from Antonio Sanchez, but Vince had been the trigger man. 3 months into my operation, I arranged for Vince to be caught in a federal sting operation targeting a completely different crime family. I provided the FBI with detailed financial records showing Vince laundering money for the DeMarco family, a rival consortium that had been trying to muscle in on our territory. Vince was arrested at his daughter's wedding reception. He died in federal custody 3 days later, officially ruled a suicide but actually murdered by DeMarco associates who thought he might flip. One down. Antonio Sanchez was next. The old man had retired to Florida after ordering my parents' murders, living in a waterfront mansion and pretending to be a legitimate businessman. I spent 6 months building a case against him using his own financial records. Payments to hitmen, bribes to police, detailed accounting of every murder he'd ordered over the past 20 years. But I didn't hand him over to the FBI. Instead, I leaked the information to Hector Ruiz, a rival crime boss whose brother had been killed by Sanchez in 1998. I made sure Hector understood that Sanchez had been skimming money from their joint ventures for decades, stealing millions that should have been split equally. Sanchez was found floating in Biscayne Bay 2 weeks later, his throat cut from ear to ear. 2 down. By the end of my first year, I'd eliminated 4 of the 7 men directly responsible for my parents' death. The other 3 had died of natural causes in the intervening decades, robbing me of the satisfaction but serving justice nonetheless. The consortium members thought I was a prodigy, a criminal mastermind who'd revolutionized their business and eliminated their enemies with surgical precision. They were grooming me for higher positions within the network. There was talk of expanding into European markets, South American connections, Asian partnerships. They had no idea they were building their own execution chamber. Dalton, meanwhile, had moved on from complaining about the will to trying to ingratiate himself with my success. He'd heard through family friends that I was doing well with Uncle Crennan's businesses, and he started calling with investment opportunities and partnership proposals. "I've been thinking," he said during one particularly annoying conversation. "Maybe we should combine our resources. I've got some connections in the pharmaceutical industry that could really complement what you're doing with construction." "What exactly do you think I'm doing with construction, Dalton?" "Building things, renovating things, making money." He paused. "Look, I know you think I'm just bitter about the inheritance, but I'm trying to move past that. We're family. We should be working together. Family." The word tasted like poison in my mouth. "I'll think about it," I lied. "Really? That's great. I actually have this proposal I've been working on. It's about government contracts, infrastructure projects. There's serious money involved, Ezra. Serious money." I could practically hear him salivating through the phone. "Send me the details." What Dalton sent me was a half-baked scheme to bid on municipal construction contracts using inside information he'd gotten from his wife's cousin, who worked in the city planning department. It was penny anti-corruption that would have netted maybe $200,000 while exposing us to massive federal liability. It was also exactly the kind of stupid, greedy move that would get the attention of every federal investigator within 500 miles. "This is interesting," I told him during our next conversation, "but I think we need to expand the scope. Make it worth our while." "Expand how?" "Meet me for dinner tomorrow night. Luigi's on 5th Street. We'll discuss the details." I spent that afternoon making sure every aspect of Dalton's life was documented and recorded. His bank accounts, his mortgage payments, his wife's shopping habits, his kids' school expenses, everything. At dinner, I laid out an expanded version of his municipal corruption scheme. Instead of bidding on single contracts, I proposed creating a network of shell companies that would dominate the entire municipal construction market. We'd bribe city council members, planning commissioners, budget administrators, everyone involved in the process. "This could net us $50 million over 5 years, I told him, watching his eyes light up with greed. "50 million? Jesus, Ezra. How do we make that happen? Carefully, methodically, and with complete deniability. What I was actually proposing was a federal conspiracy case that would send Dalton to prison for the rest of his life. Every conversation was recorded. Every meeting was documented. Every bribe was traced. But I made sure Dalton thought he was the mastermind. Over 6 months, I guided him through increasingly serious criminal acts while maintaining careful distance from anything that could be traced back to me. He recruited the corrupt officials. He structured the bribery payments. He organized the shell companies. I just provided advice and connections. When the FBI finally moved, they found a conspiracy involving 12 city officials, 18 shell companies, and over $30 million in fraudulent contracts. Dalton was identified as the ringleader based on his own phone records and financial transactions. He was arrested at his son's Little League game. During the perp walk, he kept screaming about how this was all a mistake, how he was just following my advice, how I was the real criminal. But the FBI had no evidence connecting me to any of it. As far as they could tell, I was a legitimate businessman who'd been manipulated by my greedy brother. "Ezra!" Dalton shouted as they loaded him into the federal transport vehicle. "You did this to me! You set me up!" I watched from across the parking lot, wearing sunglasses and a baseball cap. Our eyes met for just a moment. I smiled. Dalton got 25 years in federal prison. His wife divorced him within 6 months. His kids changed their last names. His house was seized as proceeds of criminal activity. 3 down. With Dalton destroyed and the original murderers eliminated, I was ready for the final phase of my plan. I'd spent 2 years building the most detailed criminal intelligence database in American history. I had financial records, communication intercepts, photographic evidence, and personal testimony that could destroy every major crime family on the East Coast. I also had Mom's engagement ring, which I'd been carrying in my pocket every day for 2 years. The ring that was supposed to point me toward justice. The ring that had instead pointed me toward something much darker. I met with FBI Special Agent Caroline Henley on a Tuesday morning in March, exactly 24 years after my parents' death. Agent Henley was a specialist in organized crime investigations, with a reputation for building airtight cases against impossible targets. "Mr. Morrison," she said, shaking my hand in the parking garage where we'd arranged to meet. "I understand you have information about criminal activities. More than information. I have evidence, names, dates, financial records, recordings, everything you need to prosecute the largest organized crime network in American history." Her eyes narrowed. "What kind of evidence?" I handed her a single file folder containing just a fraction of what I'd collected. Sample documentation, financial records showing money laundering operations totaling over $2 billion, communication intercepts proving conspiracy charges against 47 individuals, photographic evidence of murders, extortion, and political corruption spanning 6 states. Agent Henley opened the folder and her mouth fell open. "How did you obtain this information? Does it matter?" "It matters if we want to use it in court." I pulled out my phone and showed her a video recording. Me, sitting in Uncle Crennan's den 2 years earlier, discovering the safe behind the furnace. My uncle left me information about criminal activities he'd been forced to participate in. I've spent 2 years gathering additional evidence while working undercover. This wasn't technically a lie. I had been undercover. I just hadn't been working for law enforcement. Undercover for whom? For myself. These people killed my parents. I wanted justice. Agent Henley studied my face for a long moment. "And now you're ready to turn this over?" "I'm ready to watch them burn," she smiled grimly. "I think we can arrange that." The next 18 months were a blur of federal raids, grand jury indictments, and plea negotiations. 47 people were arrested on federal charges, ranging from money laundering to conspiracy to commit murder. The investigation, dubbed Operation Bloodline by the media, was called the largest organized crime takedown in FBI history. Sophia Marcelli was sentenced to life in prison without parole. The entire Sanchez organization was dismantled. Uncle Crennan's construction company was seized as criminal proceeds, along with all of his other businesses. I testified before 3 separate grand juries and was placed in the Federal Witness Protection Program for 6 months while the trials proceeded. When it was all over, I had a new identity, a new social security number, and a bank account containing the $6 million the federal government had allowed me to keep as a cooperating witness reward. I also had Mom's engagement ring. I moved to a small town in Oregon where nobody knew my history. I opened a legitimate financial consulting business, helping small companies manage their accounting and investment portfolios. I bought a house with a garden where I could grow tomatoes and peppers like Mom used to do. For the first time in my adult life, I was completely alone and completely free. 3 years later, I got a letter forwarded through my old lawyer, federal prison mail postmarked from Dalton's correctional facility in Pennsylvania. "Ezra, I know what you did. I know you planned everything from the beginning. I know you destroyed our family, destroyed my life, destroyed everything I worked for. You used Uncle Crennan's death as an excuse to become exactly like the people who killed our parents. You want to know the difference between you and them? They at least admitted what they were. You're still pretending to be a victim. When I get out of here, and I will get out, I'm going to tell everyone the truth about what you really are. I'm going to make sure the whole world knows that Ezra Morrison is nothing but a monster who destroyed his own brother for money and revenge. I hope you're happy. I hope it was worth it. I hope you think about what you've become every single day for the rest of your miserable life. Dalton." I read the letter twice, then burned it in my fireplace. That evening, I sat on my back porch, watching the sunset over the Oregon mountains. I pulled Mom's engagement ring from my pocket and held it up to catch the dying light. It still threw rainbows across my hand, tiny fragments of beauty in the growing darkness. Dalton was right about one thing. I had become exactly like the people who killed our parents. I had learned their methods, adopted their ruthlessness, mastered their complete indifference to human suffering. But he was wrong about the rest. I wasn't pretending to be a victim. I wasn't pretending to be anything. I was exactly what Uncle Crennan's inheritance had made me, a man with unlimited resources, no moral constraints, and a very long memory for injustice. In my garden, the tomatoes were beginning to ripen. I put Mom's ring back in my pocket and went inside to plan tomorrow's work. Some inheritances come with money, some come with property, some come with family businesses. Mine came with the knowledge that justice and revenge are often the same thing, viewed from different angles. And sometimes the most precious thing you can inherit is the freedom to choose which angle you prefer.